Hello, listeners. Ryan Casey here, and welcome back to the MASSP podcast series. Having an administrator start and end their career in one school district is almost unheard of anymore. Whether principals are looking for promotions, new challenges, increased benefits, or different experiences, there are opportunities each and every school year to move to a new building or district. In today's episode, we will explore what that experience has been like for 3 different principals who have recently changed positions or districts. We are joined by Theresa Stager, principal at Saline High School, Brad Robbins, principal of Croswell-Lexington Middle School, and Todd Simmons, principal of Cedar Springs High School. All 3 have been longtime administrators already, and we discussed what challenges and opportunities occurred as they made job changes over the last summer break. So enjoy your ride to or from school, your run on the treadmill, or however you like to listen, because another MASSP podcast episode starts now. All right, Theresa, Brad, Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to jump on the MASSP podcast today. You know, it was really interesting. I saw over maybe the course of the spring or summer that all of you have kind of transitioned to new roles and some of you new districts. And MASSP does a really good job, I think, sometimes having a conversation, providing resources for all these new principals that come in that move from the teacher role to administration. We have new principal connect, we have webinars, we do trainings, but we don't talk a lot of times about principals that are in one role and they move to a new district, or they go from assistant to the principal role as well. And so I just thought it was really interesting to see, are those experiences similar or different that are to people that are moving into administration for the first time? For some of you, I know you stayed in-house in the same district, but a new role. Some of you moved to a brand new district. And again, what similarities and differences occur when that happens? And I have experience in both. And so I just thought this was going to be a fun conversation to have. So I really appreciate all of you being with me today. So we're going to jump right into the first question. And just to give everybody a little bit of context so they understand what role you are in now and what district and maybe what changed, what didn't. Theresa, do you mind just kind of going first and sharing a little bit about your administrative background and how you are at Saline right now?
Sure. My name is Theresa Stager, and this is my 10th year in administration. I started in the 2013-14 school year at a small pre-K to 8 Catholic school out on the border of Wayne and Monroe counties. The school's closed now. It closed after I left. And so I spent 3 years there, and then I moved to Saline as an assistant principal of curriculum and instruction. I was in that role for the last 6 years. I was 5.5 before I became the interim. Our principal moved to a role in central office mid-year last year. And so I became the interim, and then I was fortunate enough to be selected to be the permanent principal. So that's where I am. And I'm starting at the beginning of the actual year 1 with a whole new admin team, and they're fantastic. And it's it's been a great gig so far. I'm pretty excited and happy to be here. Thanks for including me in this.
Awesome. And fun fact, Theresa and I used to do quite a bit of these podcast episodes back probably when she had more time. So she's no stranger to the MASSP podcast. So thanks again, Theresa. How about Brad? You want to go next?
Sure. Brad Robbins, currently the principal at Croswell-Lex Middle School. Prior to this role, I spent 5 years as the assistant principal and athletic director at St. Clair Middle School in the East China School District. Before that, I did 1 year as an assistant principal and athletic director at K-PAC Junior Senior High School. Came out of the classroom as a K-12 phys ed and health teacher, but transitioned into this role in a new district with a pretty much entirely new administrative team, all the way up to the superintendent this year. So when I was hired, the superintendent actually got the phone call that he was getting a different job the day that he was offering me my position. So just starting to get into it, enjoying it so far. It's been nice. We are pre-Labor Day start, so it feels like I'm, kind of ingrained into a school year at this point, which is good, but that's where I'm at.
Awesome. And fun fact about Brad, he is currently my daughter's middle school principal. So I think he felt obligated to do the podcast today because I can catch him at the pickup line, the drop-off line, the middle school volleyball games.
That's why it was at 3. I thought you were going to have me get in the van and we were going to do like carpool karaoke.
That we could have. I considered it. So well, thanks for being here, Brad. And how about the elder statesman of the group here? We're going to go with Mr. Todd Simmons.
Thank you. My name is Todd Simmons. I am at Cedar Springs High School, and I've only been here for 2 months. So prior to that, 17 years at Pewamo, Westphalia Middle School, High School, and just really excited to not only be a part of this with Mr. Casey, but also just to be here at Cedar Springs High School. I'm learning, I'm trying to listen, just observe as we're trying to really grow a strong culture here. So thanks for having me be a part of this, Mr. C.
And I've got to do a third fun fact here, and one that Todd will hate me for saying, but I just have to. I can see it on his face already. He's a former principal of the year, which is pretty cool. And also Todd and Theresa both serve on our MASSP board of directors. Todd's actually the president-elect. And Theresa, what region are you representing? Remind me.
Region 8.
Region 8. Awesome. So again, really appreciate it. Whoops, there we go. Todd, I'm going to keep it with you if we can. As I mentioned, I'm really curious just to see the similar and different challenges that arise for those that move into new districts versus those being promoted within, as well as moving from assistant, to a lead principal role. So what's it been like for you leading a building, as you mentioned, at Pewamo, Westphalia for all those years to now leading a brand new school for the first time?
Yeah, my wife gets mad at me for saying this, but I say to people all the time, I don't know what I'm doing here. I knew what I was doing at PW for all those years, but I don't know what I'm doing here. So I'm really trying to be respectful to the culture that's already in place. So again, I'm listening, I'm observing, I'm just trying to garner as much knowledge as I can. And the way I've done that is, I'm in classrooms all day, every day. I try never to be in here during the day. During the summer, spent a lot of time trying to develop relationships with all 3 legs of the stool. Like I took our student council out to eat, met with them a few times. I invited all my teammates here, all 82 teammates, to meet with me for like 30 minutes just to hear their story and to hear what their passions are and hear about their family. Had a couple of meet and greets called Snacks with Simmons with parent groups to try to, develop a relationship there. So really it's just been about trying to develop authentic relationship with all 3 legs of the stool as I learn about this place and observe and just listen. There's a lot of similarities between here and PW, not just the rural nature, but kids are kids, educators are educators. I've been inspired here. We have unbelievable students here and we have unbelievable educators. I've really enjoyed being in classrooms all day, getting to feel and support and sense that. I would say the greatest challenge is this is so much bigger than PW. I had 25 classrooms at Pewamo, Westphalia, and every day I could at least peek into them. Here I've got 60 classrooms and I got 2 floors, which is awesome. I got stairs. I get a little workout in every day, but I've never had stairs before. But it's just the challenge of trying to get to all the classrooms. It's the challenge of trying to develop relationships with 82 professionals and 1,100 kids. So that's been the greatest challenge, is just trying to get to know everybody.
You made my day because you mentioned something you do, Snacks with Simmons, and you used alliteration to do it. That's my favorite all-time go-to move when you need a name for something. We did Coffee with Casey. So that's pretty cool to hear. How about Brad for you? So we actually changed positions. We went from that AP/AD role to the lead principal, and we also moved districts as well. So a lot of change maybe for you. Do you mind kind of talking about what that experience has been like so far?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Todd just said in my mind's eye is exactly, what I want to do and what I've tried to focus on doing, in that I don't know what I'm doing here. Not only is it a new community for me to learn, and a new school and building and an entirely new staff, it's a new role for me. So kind of learning how to slot those things in. It's not that I haven't worked in school buildings with middle school kids, but I have an assistant principal now as well. And we have an athletic director now as well. So a lot of those routines and normal things that have paced my years in administration, those aren't my responsibilities. And letting some of those things go and just observing those is number one. But number two, trying to develop new norms for me in the way that I, calendar my time and put some things forth in terms of that. And one of them is just listening and learning the staff and getting into classrooms. Another thing is learning the community and the people, in this area. That was really easy for me in my previous building because that's where I also lived and did a lot of things in that community. So I have a little bit of a commute now, and just learning, PTO and those folks that are really going to be resources in developing that culture and building culture. Those are linchpin pieces that I need to learn, and understanding that I don't know everything. So taking that all in and fighting the urge to rush, I think, is the biggest challenge for me right now.
That's a great point. Trying not to, step back and take your time with things and let it kind of happen organically sometimes. Theresa, we're staying within the same district, but we still get to make that change in role. So again, probably some similarities, but also probably some unique differences to staying within the district as well. Can you just kind of talk about what that's been like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not only in the same district, but I'm in the same building. So that, is even more for me. It makes things a lot easier, but it also makes it difficult at the same time because to the point of Brad and Todd, like, I don't know what I'm doing in this role yet. I've not been the principal of a large high school before. So this is new for me, but because the staff's known me for 6 years, and I've been an administrator, the learning curve, the ability to be okay with the learning curve is a little shorter, right? Because they feel like you should know what you're doing. You've been here before. And I think too, having the interim role last year, while not hugely helpful because we had lost half of our administrative team between January and March. And so we were just trying to stay afloat. And while I've been here for 6 years, our administrative team has not changed until last January. And so now we have a completely new team. We have more deans, we've hired new people. So this administrative team looks very different than what it looked like before. And for me, Brad, to your point, I have assistant principals now. Like, what does that look like? Because I know what I did as an assistant principal, but I also had done it for 6 years and I knew the staff and I knew the building. So we're doing a lot of learning here. We're doing a lot of really having the new administrative team learn the staff, because while the staff feels like we know what the issues were, and we've addressed a lot of them. Normally, I would say, if I was in a new building, I would not be doing anything right now. I would be learning and listening and figuring out what's going on and only fixing what's absolutely broken. But having been here for a little while, I do have the knowledge of what might be broken or what we could have fixed. So we were able to make some changes initially. It's been really helpful. My first order of business last year was doing a survey with the staff, and just like a truly anonymous survey, not a Google form, not anything that we're worried about how it gets back, but a truly anonymous survey, and finding what our pain points were and what we felt like we needed moving into the school year. And so the admin team worked to address those over the summer. And so I felt like we got a really good start this year. But also to the point of, to Todd's point and Brad's point, we're learning different communities. I have the same community, which is wonderful, but also that learning curve the honeymoon's over at this point, right? Like things should be happening because we know the community, we know the people. So it's a different stress. There is a comfort to it, as opposed to like when I came here and didn't know the staff or the community. But it's a lot. It's been a lot.
Oh, I can feel for you in that regard. I actually went from teacher to assistant principal to principal within the same district. And there's so many wonderful benefits to doing that, but there's also, there is a lot of challenges as well. So I appreciate all of those points that you mentioned. You actually brought up a good point, and I remember feeling this way moving from assistant principal to principal because you have assistants now. So you do that role, but I feel like you don't ever really get trained in like how to train or lead others in that role. So I'm curious, maybe Theresa, if you and Brad want to talk about that a little bit, and then Todd can jump in, because I'm not sure. Todd, did you have an assistant principal at Puamo?
We long story short, we kind of grew our culture there quite a bit. So we transitioned that person from like APAD to director of assessment, curriculum, and athletics. So we didn't need the traditional AP anymore.
Got it. So but now where you're at, I'm sure it looks a little different. So do you mind talking about that a little bit? Just maybe Trish, you want to go first, and then Brad, what's that like? So you're from assistant principal to now principal, but now you have this team that you get to help lead, and maybe what's been interesting about that?
Yeah, sure. There's, we have a doc that we all work off of, right? And it's our responsibilities document. And it's, here are the admin in the building, here are the deans, here's the registrar, here's what everybody's responsible for. And it was really interesting because we hired an AP that was outside of the district and outside of the state. He's from Michigan originally, but wasn't working here. And so it took us a little while to be able to determine what it was that I did before and who that is best placed with now, and then reassessing strengths and weaknesses and how to divide it up that way. And so it's been interesting, number one, just trying to figure out roles and responsibilities. We have 1,800 kids at the high school here, and there are about 95, 96 certified staff members. So a lot of evaluations. That's what I'm looking at right now, is making sure that our lists are balanced and determining who oversees which departments and things like that. But, in regards to the day-to-day things, it's been hard for me having myself been in this building and having an admin staff who hasn't, or, one assistant principal was here last year, but last year was not like anything anybody's ever seen. Right. So knowing what that should look like, but also knowing that you can't train a lot of things until they happen. So it's been a lot of teamwork in the last couple of weeks, just kind of jumping on things together and making sure, part of it is our assistant principal came from a turnaround school, right? The one that we hired from out of state, which is a great background to have, but we're not a turnaround school. So knowing that, his idea of what you come in with and what you're walking into is going to look very different than what you're actually walking into when you walk into Saline. So having, adjusting expectations, talking about what that looks like, helping people who are coming into a new district and a new role and what that should look like. It's been a process. And Brad, I'm sure you've seen, what have been your experiences with training somebody to do the job that you had before, even if it wasn't here?
Right. So I think the one thing I'm very fortunate that in my previous experience, I had bosses that gave me opportunities to do, I would say, things that APs don't traditionally do. Right. So I always made it clear that I had aspirations to do additional things and not just AP it forever. So that was nice that I got to be a part of a lot of the curricular decisions, master scheduling decisions that kind of come along with the building principal role. One of the things, that's unique about my position now is the holdover administrator from all the change that happened at Croswell-Lex. The one that stayed was the assistant principal here at the middle school. He was actually on the committee to hire me essentially to be his boss, right? So I mean, that's a good start in a relationship that I had that vote of confidence from him. And that was a good place for us to kind of get kicked off. And we're just working to develop that relationship. And having done that role, I can lend him some advice and feedback, but he's also got some experience in that regard. But one of the things that I have to remind myself of is that administrators in general are becoming kind of an endangered species. And if you're in this gig for, a while, which 7 years for me now is quite a bit of experience anymore. And I want to remind myself that I do have something to offer him and to give him in terms of feedback. And he hasn't been an administrator really in the times pre-COVID. And now we're kind of transitioning where a lot of the policies, protocols, norms, culture building items are coming out of a pandemic, and people want those back. So he hasn't really had the good fortune to be in an administrative role without all the COVID restrictions. Not that you can't learn from it, but hopefully he'll have, a more enjoyable experience if we can latch on to some of the cool stuff that I used to get to do as an AP that kind of dwindled away. Now there's plenty of things about culture and education that are challenging for everybody in administration, but I think that's the biggest thing for me in terms of training a staff or building that relationship with the other administrators, is reminding myself that I do have something to offer him, even though that he has been here, but also understand that he's got all the information about the culture and what's transpired here before, and I need to just listen to that. And I'm not ready to throw anything out, and we'll keep what's great for our culture moving forward, and we'll get rid of what doesn't work for us moving forward as well.
That's a really good point. I forgot about that. So I think that's a great thing to mention, is that he's got all that background knowledge about the district. So as long as you guys are working as a team, like I said, I think you both have something to offer each other. Todd, so we went from having maybe a kind of a dean / this / that, and how many do we have? Assistant principal team at Cedar Springs now?
Yes, sir. So we have Mr. Eddie Johns. He's our assistant principal here. Mr. Matt Moffitt, who's our assistant principal / athletic director. And then a legend of these parts, Mr. Mike Duffy, who's our dean of students. And prior to that, a longtime elementary principal here, who is kind of like the godfather, that just when he thought he could get out, they just pull him back in year after year. And he keeps saying one more year, and we just add to that contract. So yeah, we have a really, really strong team here, just high character people. And if you got character, everything else can be taught. So it's been really cool.
You were probably, I'm guessing, kind of rubbing your hands together at the prospect of getting that job and having that admin team to support you. Now, even though it's a bigger district, but now, as you mentioned before, was 60 some classrooms to get to, dividing and conquering, makes that approach a little easier. So, yeah. Next kind of question that I just really am curious of is, based on your previous experience, what's been the most important thing that you kind of took with you into either the new role or the new district or building, for those that went to new places? And Todd, you want to start with that?
Yes, sir. I learned from my mistakes. Back in 2008, when I came back to PW, because I had taught and coached there for 3 years before I went back to Central Michigan University to coach up there. And, I came in 2008. I had a vision. I felt like it was a very strong vision, but I just came in, guns blazing, and I learned from my error there. So I've been very intentional, as aforementioned, about listening, learning, observing, and really starting by building relationships, with all three legs of that stool. We all know, everybody that's on this Zoom and anybody who might listen to it knows that relationships are the bedrock, the foundation of everything we do in our calling. And I've learned just how important that is. And that's what I've been focused on, is just really trying to get to know everybody authentically and really find their why. Because if you know a person's why, you can inspire, you can affirm, you can support, you can guide, you can mentor. And that's what my focus has been on, learning from my errors in the past and just growing real relationships here.
Theresa, how about you?
I think that's a great point. The relationships are the foundation of what we do, and really the only way you can lead in a building. You have to have that mutual respect and understanding. I feel like that's one thing that I worked really hard as an AP, was to build those relationships. And so it helped when I became the principal, because the staff knew me and knew who I was and what I was about, and knew why we were doing things, and they knew that I was being truthful, and we were, they had a trust there. And I think that that's really, really important, is to find a way to build that. It's very difficult when you're coming into a new place, There's no question about that. When I first got here, it took a very long time, but making sure that you're listening and that you are making choices that are what is best for the staff and the students, and that the staff specifically understand why they're happening. Students too, it's important for the students to know, but when you're trying to make any changes or improvements or adjustments, that everybody understands the reason behind it, because I think that that can save a lot of headaches later, and it can make your job a whole lot easier.
It's a great point. Brad, how about yourself?
I think so. In my previous, transition to St. Clair Middle School, I was actually I was hired originally by Mike Alley, who was a principal of the year at the middle level in MASSP. And I guess what I'll say is we had two new leaders going into that building as principal and assistant principal, and we were coming in behind somebody who was well respected in the profession and the community, and that was difficult. I'll say from the standpoint of it's hard as a newer administrator to make changes right away with a staff that was very veteran and used to doing it in a very successful way. So what I got used to in my first couple of years was that whole idea of teachers starting a conversation with in the past, right? In the past, these are the things that we used to do. And I found that to be the case as well in this new role. So one of the things that I'm trying to remind myself of is that time in administration. I don't think it was necessarily because of Mike Alley or unique to me. I think it's just human nature to share in that regard. But what I've learned, and maybe this isn't super fruity, is that if I set myself up by just acquiescing to every in the past conversation and not planting my flag in terms of how I'm going to be honest and authentic with staff members moving forward on certain issues, it sets myself up for like a longer haul in turning that around, which I experienced in my first administrative job. So I'm trying to be not off-putting because I want to build those relationships, but I think it's more authentic if I can just be honest about what my thoughts are on those conversations that start with in the past, because it probably won't all be the same. It doesn't mean it was bad. It just means maybe my skill set doesn't match up with or my leadership style doesn't match up with something that you did in the past, and we'll just have to find a new path together. So just trying to remind myself of those times and reminding myself that people will see through, or I'll make a bunch more work for myself if I'm not authentic. So I might as well just start that way.
I appreciate you mentioning that in the past kind of mentality. I experienced that going from one district to another district, and there's certain things that it was just like, as you're just watching and observing, I'm not going to try and move their cheese too much on certain things, but then there are certain things that you are going to plant your flag on that you've done that are tried and true and will work. And so it's kind of that balancing act of, building credibility with them in terms of, look, this is going to work. We're going to do it. I'm going to try and not drag you along, but go along with you. And then you guys will be able to see it yourselves. And there's other things that are traditions that even if they're new and weird and they don't make sense, they just happen to work sometimes for whatever reason. But I appreciate you mentioning that. All right, final question, because I've got to get you guys back into your buildings and parking lots and hallways and athletic events. So, and it's okay if your answer is similar to something you've already touched on, but we're recording this in September. It'll air in October. There will probably be new principal openings come December, January, maybe halfway through the year, if not by springtime for sure. So what is one piece of advice that you would offer a sitting current administrator that's considering doing a new role, maybe assistant principal to principal, or going to a new district? And Brad, I'll pick on you first.
Gosh, kind of a loaded question. I think there's some, knowing who the audience is for that particular question, there's some things I will say. Don't be afraid to do it if it works for you and your life. I think, in my own perspective, I'm coming from a district that I was pretty loyal to in terms of my teaching career. I live there, I live at home, and then I had to make a decision about my profession and my trajectory, and it didn't necessarily jive nicely with where I was before. So if you're thinking about it and you want to challenge yourself, I think if you're getting comfortable in your job, that might be an indication that it's time to take on a new challenge as well. I think that's where I think I was getting used to doing something, and it was keeping me there more than it was inspiring me to build my career. So I just kind of took a leap, and I'm enjoying it. I think it's a good move. And then, the frank part of it is, if it's not for you, you take that leap of faith and it's not for you, there's other opportunities out there. And as I said before, we're becoming an endangered species. So build your network and work hard and do the right things, and things will work out for you.
Todd, how about your advice?
Yeah, just being totally blunt, I never thought I'd ever leave Pewamo, Westphalia. And I didn't really want to leave. It was an absolute leap of faith for us. 17 years of just, relationships and people that I still, call and text with just today, texting kids that are getting with me, and, it's our educators there at PW. It was tough to leave, but it was a leap of faith. And I think we all have to just trust and follow our faith and not be afraid to see where that leads. There's no question this is where I'm supposed to be. I have not one doubt that this is where I'm supposed to be. But that's difficult when, as mentioned, our calling is based on relationship, and it's tough to say, hey, I'm going up the road. I'm not going to see every morning at the front door, but that's where faith comes in, and that's where trust comes in. And again, like I said, I so miss my people at PW. However, this is where I know I'm supposed to be.
Awesome. And finally, Theresa.
Yeah, I would echo what Brad and Todd have said. I know a lot of people who moved into different roles these last 9-10 months. Many of the mid-year, right? And some people who thought they would never, same as Todd, who thought they would never leave where they were, or had no reason to go, close to retirement. I'm good. But you have to do what is best for you. And sometimes it's not the easiest decision. And sometimes it's not one that maybe even makes sense. But if you feel like it's something that you need to explore, then go ahead and start exploring. Take a look around, contact people that are in the areas. If you see a job opening somewhere, reach out to somebody. MASSP is great for that. Reach out to somebody who is in that region or that area, and try to get a little bit of information on where it is, so that you feel where it is, what the community is like, what the school is like, what their thoughts and values are, so that whether or not it's a good place for you. Because what you don't want to do is take a leap of faith to a place that you know nothing about, right? Get your information and make the decision that you need to make.
Thank you for sharing that. And I don't think that's really any different than your approach if you're going to apply to be a first-time administrator. I think the only difference is you build up this network, or this PLN of people that you can maybe have an easier time to connect with and reach out to be able to get some of that background information, right? And find out what's going on and what exactly do they need, and does it kind of meet your own personal beliefs and things like that. So I have taken enough of all of your time. I really, really appreciate it. So Brad Robbins, Theresa Stager, and Todd Simmons, thank you so much for sharing with us your experience this last whirlwind of, for some of you, 2 to 6 to 10 months. I really, really appreciate the time, and look forward to see you guys in person soon.
Thank you, Mr. C. Appreciate you.
You're at the pickup line, man. Thanks.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening to the MASSP podcast. Remember, you can listen to this podcast and others anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Just search for MASSP or hit the subscribe button right now.